Hi everyone, hope you are well. It's been quite a while since my last video, but I'm happy to catch up with you again. At the end of February, the early blooming sakura started, and it marked the coming of spring. I've been developing a new story and working on picture book spreads for my portfolio. I start by printing out my digital sketches. I'm keeping my paper in a moisture-proof bag as Japan can get quite humid in the summer. Using a LED trace pad, I finalize and refine the line work using colored pencils. This particular illustration is about a frog that discovers lost objects all around the city, which is actually based on my own daily encounters. For areas where I really want to emphasize a gradation of color and more organic textures, I will use watercolors. I switch to Copic markers when I want a consistent tone and flatter color, such as for the gray pavement. It's also much easier to use than all the additional tools and times needed for watercolors. Next, I'll scan in the illustration and do some basic edits on Photoshop before transferring the file to Procreate. Maybe you're wondering why I don't just do everything digitally. I've tried many times over the years, but there's still a stylistic quality in my traditional approach that I feel digital can't fully replicate. I prefer to preserve some of that rawness, so I'm still sticking to a traditional base. I would say maybe 30 to 50% is digital for the set of illustrations in this video. Most of my digital process is smoothing out textures, adjusting line work, and increasing the saturation of colors for a more polished look.
Myself young and restless, a lampoon of youth. So who am I to really teach you anything? Do I know what's true? True for you. But at least I think there are some nuggets found along the way. Learn to wait for night to turn into day. Night to turn into day. But if your aim is straight.
For the next illustration, I'm sketching out a lost and found office, imagining a place where all kinds of lost items are gathered and sorted. It's a classic cluttered scene that I love to draw. There's so many intricate and small details in this illustration. I'm specifically using a hard lead colored pencil to get the sharpest point. Now I'm going in to color with Copics and watercolors. I wondered how to make an illustration still look visually cohesive when there are so many objects and naturally many colors. The main character is the frog, and the sharp pink color of his shirt is quite eye-catching. I later toned down a lot of the surrounding objects, taking out the red tones and changing it to more subdued and cool tones so that only the frog is in pink. When I started to work the drawing digitally, I kept a color palette at the top to constantly reference as well, trying to keep to the same family of colors. After so much drawing, my fingers started to hurt, so I did some research and found this thick grip. It's great to use the thin end to still use the double tap function, but I like swapping it out for the super thick side. Over the years, as a working illustrator, I've really put a lot of thought and trial and error in the ergonomics of my process. I'm glad to have found this solution, and I hope it's helpful to one of you out there. I'm happy to say I haven't experienced any finger joint pain since. I would love to hear about tools and accessories you might recommend. One day, I went to see a Noh theater performance. Noh is a kind of classic Japanese performing arts, kind of like an opera, since the 14th century. The performers wear carved masks and intricate kimonos. I even got to try on one of the masks, and the tiny eye holes is actually quite hard to see through. Another day, Dorky and I went to the suburbs. We really enjoy thrifting, and there is such a great culture of reuse and recycling in Japan. There's such well-kept items of all kinds. We like to go toy hunting, but we've bought furniture, even our appliances, and clothes secondhand as well. Lunch was a delicious katsu curry. Before heading home, I dropped by the 100-yen shop to pick up some household items. This is the cover illustration sketch. I'm making some revisions, adding in more details on the luggage rack, and pushing the characters further away from the middle spine of the book. This time, I'm using an extra big LED trace pad. It's actually my first time using this one. I was surprised the exposed parts didn't make such a strong glare and hurt my eyes. It's quite a soft ambient light. I'm thinking it might be useful as a light box for future product photo shoots. On another note, I would love to know what kind of questions you may have for my creative process. I'm wondering if there are other topics I could cover besides how I'm technically executing everything.
This time of the year, I can't stop asking why I'm struggling to stay. It's a mystery why I'm here. I guess I'm just too tired of fighting what you say. As we're growing older, darling, understand it all. It's me that I'm fighting. Now that I see what is hiding underneath my skin, and I'm always sorry to bring you in my fall. Yeah, with my fall. Like this never end. We have to try and keep the mood up. Stay. I know that sometimes we pretend to love each other like we used to. is growing stronger, 'cause it's me that I'm fighting. Now that I see what is hiding underneath my skin, and I'm always sorry to bring you with my fall. Yeah, it's me that I'm fighting. Now that I see.
This past month, I've been working with my illustration mentor to refine my portfolio. She has been so helpful in giving me conceptual and technical advice on color and composition. I always feel so inspired and motivated after our sessions. I really recommend illustrators in the early to mid stages to connect with an experienced illustrator who can really help to elevate your skills, way of thinking, and increase your industry knowledge. Anyways, the toughest part of coloring this illustration was doing the light and shadows. I'm first painting the characters as if they had consistent lighting, almost like a flat approach with direct light. I left the shadows to digital paintings as there is more of a leeway for revisions. I'm not really sure how I'm going to handle the lighting at this stage, even though I did start with a black and white quick light study. It's all about having patience and trusting that you will eventually get there. After scanning in the artwork, I'm going in digitally to touch it up. You can see it in these before and afters. This is the first pass at the shadows and sunlight. I play around with the opacity of layers as well as the type of layer properties such as multiply and overlay. I ended up with so many layers that I have to merge them together. When I placed the cover into my InDesign file, I realized the dimensions were off and I had a big gap on the left. I decided to extend the scene and widen it up with another window. I'm so glad I did, as it really helped to bring in more dimensionality and breathing space into the scene. It feels more expansive and impressive even. Here's an overview of the whole progress. From top left is the initial sketch, and then the scanned illustration with basic color blocking. You'll notice the color of the walls kept changing. I'm thinking carefully how to visually divide the space in cool versus warm tone to really focus the viewer to the main character of the frog. The title color font also changes to a more subdued palette.
Goes 9 and then 76.
It's funny how it all
And it goes
played out. Broken dreams seldom get realized. For me, you were a part of life that escaped and left me outside. Who could see the will of time? And that you were still a friend of mine. Our story wasn't over yet, and no one can tell what's coming next. The journey is not ours to control. The journey is not ours to control. I'm glad that it is so. I'm lucky it is so.
Thanks for spending your time with me and hope to see you in the next video. Bye!